My name is Xavier Robert, coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State. It's a terrific afternoon to look at the world view today. Here are the top stories we've gathered for you. Growing list of countries evacuate diplomats and citizens from Sudan's capital as fighting continues into second week. China distances itself from remarks of one of its envoys who questioned sovereignty of Ukraine and other former Soviet countries. World military spending reaches all-time high of $2.24 trillion in 2022. First, on worldview, and EU citizens have been airlifted out, many on French and German rescue missions. The UK evacuated diplomats and their families yesterday, but an estimated 4,000 will remain severely limited without a ceasefire. Furthermore, the US airlifted embassy staff out of Sudan by helicopter, but says it will not evacuate US citizens leaving the country. Reports further say fighting between the Sudanese army and RSF paramilitary force has left 420 people dead since it began on 15th April. We move from as ambassador to France, who questioned the sovereignty of former Soviet countries. France and the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania have also expressed dismay over the remarks. Asked about his position on whether Crimea is part of Ukraine, Chinese ambassador Liu Xi and had been offered to Ukraine by former Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev. His comments refer not just to Ukraine, which Russia invaded in February last year, but also to all former Soviet republics which emerged as independent nations after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, including many members of the European Union. Responding on Sunday, Ukrainian presidential aide here an absurd version of the history of Crimea from a representative of a country that it described as scrupulous about its 1,000-year history. Itself from the remarks of one of its envoys who questioned the sovereignty of Ukraine and other former Soviet countries. Paris ambassador Liu Xi's comments last week caused widespread outrage, leading on calls to Beijing to clarify. But today, China's foreign ministry said it respected the independence of all post-Soviet republics. China is a major ally of Russia and has not condemned President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine last year. It sees itself as a mission prompted by the invasion, and many in the West doubt its impartiality on the issue. Now, today, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Mao Ning rejected Liu's position, saying Beijing respected the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of all countries and upheld the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter. Later, the Chinese Meanwhile, 3 Baltic countries, Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia, have summoned China's representatives to clarify Liu's comments. Still in China, Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Sun Weidong has lodged a complaint with South Korea's ambassador to Beijing over erroneous remarks by the South Korean president about Taiwan. This is according to China's foreign ministry. Strong dissatisfaction. According to a Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs statement on Sunday, the diplomatic dispute between Beijing and Seoul stems from a recent interview with media during which Yong said increased tension around Taiwan was due to attempts to change the status quo by force, and that he opposed attempts to do so. The South Korean leader also said the dispute between China and Taiwan was now a global issue. Free spending reached an all-time high of $2.24 trillion in 2022, as Russia's invasion of Ukraine fueled a sharp jump in military spending across Europe. This is according to a leading defense think tank on Monday in its annual report on global military expenditure. There was a 13% rise in Europe, the steepest in at least 30 years. CIPRI said most of that was linked to Russia and Ukraine, but other countries also stepped up military spending in response to perceived Russian threats. In a separate development, it warns the country can no longer be protected by its geographic isolation in the missile age. The government will spend more than 19 billion Australian dollars to deliver the report's immediate recommendations. The 110-page study is described as the biggest overhaul of Australian defense since World War II. The force, if necessary. The Chinese Navy has also established a major presence in the South China Sea, claiming parts of it as its own territory, contrary to international ownership. Jose Antonio Primo de Rivera founded the Falange movement, and his remains lie at a giant mausoleum created by the former fascist regime outside Madrid. It was key to Gianfrancisco Franco's uprising, which triggered the 1936 to 1939 Spanish Civil War. The grave is next to the altar at a basilica in the Valley of the Fallen, the Franco Mausoleum, now renamed Cuelgamuros Valley. Franco's remains were removed from there in 2019, which angered far-right activists who still cherish his memory. The basilica's prisoners were forced to build the memorial. The reburial is part of the left-wing government's drive to stop veneration of the fascist Civil War victory or of the Franco dictatorship. Away from that now, 9 people have been injured after gunfire erupted at a teenagers' party in Jasper County. Jasper High School students had gathered after their annual prom dance. The victims, who have not been publicly named, ranged in age from 15 to 19. All are recovering from their wounds at 2 local hospitals. The police have not yet made any arrests and are requesting the public's help. Jasper County Sheriff Mitchell Newman said on Sunday that all they know is that some kids ganged up after prom to have a night they could remember the rest of their lives, and somehow it got twisted and a bunch of children got shot. He said investigators were speaking brought an abrupt end to the house party just north of Jasper, a town of about 7,000 people in eastern Texas, shortly after midnight on Sunday. The majority of students at the party had attended Jasper High's prom, which took place without incident earlier in the night at a local church meeting hall. And none of the victims suffered life-threatening injuries. According to police, they include a 19-year-old girl who sustained city limits, and the sheriff's office is investigating whether the two were related. Firearm incidents are now the leading cause of death for American children and teenagers. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, last weekend, 4 people were killed and 28 others were injured in a shooting at a Sweet 16 birthday party in Alabama. In a separate development, Jordanian ministry. Jordan's media agency reported that Imad al-Adwan was detained on Saturday night at the Allenby Bridge crossing. Authorities said they found 12 machine guns and 270 other types of firearms, according to unverified video on Israeli social media. Now, Israel has not commented, and local media reporting has been restricted. The Jordanian Foreign Ministry spokesman said it was trying to resolve the case as speedily as possible, and whether the Member of Parliament had done the same thing before. Jordan and Israel officially established ties after signing a peace treaty in 1994, but their relationship has recently been strained over violence between Israeli security forces and Palestinians on the Haram al-Sharif Temple Mount Holy City in Jerusalem, of which Jordan is custodian. Said to have told followers to starve to death. To stay with us for details on this and more, right after the break. Of Malindi as they investigate a preacher said to have told followers to starve to death. The bodies of children were among the dead. The police said exhumations are ongoing. The shallow graves are in Shakahola Forest, where 15 members of the Good News International Church were rescued last week. Church leader Paul Mackenzie Nthenge is in custody pending. One of the graves is believed to contain the bodies of 5 members of the same family, 3 children and their parents. Nthenge has denied wrongdoing but has been refused bail. He insists that he shut down his church in 2019. He allegedly told followers to starve themselves in order to meet Jesus. Kenyan media said pathologists will take DNA samples and conduct tests to determine whether the victims died of starvation. The police arrested Nthenge on 15th April after discovering the bodies of 4 people suspected of having starved themselves to death at a crime scene. According to further reports, Nthenge allegedly named 3 villages, Nazareth, Bethlehem and Judea, and baptized followers in ponds before telling them to fast. Kenya is a religious country, and there have been previous cases of people being lured into dangerous, unregulated church killed in a village in northern Burkina Faso, according to local prosecutor who announced an investigation into the attack. Citing information from police in the town of Wahikuya, prosecutor Lamin Kabore said the attack took place on Friday in the village of Kamar near the border with Mali. The statement said the perpetrators were wearing the uniforms of the Burkinabe Armed Forces, but gave no further details on the attack. Armed groups are thought to control about 40% of Burkina Faso in regional unrest that began in Mali in 2012 when hardline groups hijacked a Tuareg separatist uprising. Burkina Faso's military rulers this month, Kamar survivors told media more than 100 people on motorbikes and pickup trucks had raided the village, and that dozens of men and young people were killed by men dressed in military uniforms. Away from that, Burundi's former Prime Minister Alain Guillaume Bunyoni has been arrested according to the country's Justice Ministry. Bunyoni was Prime Minister from June 2020 to September 2022 when he was sacked after the president accused unnamed people of planning a coup against him. A statement on Sunday signed by General Prosecutor Sylvester Nyandwi and shared by the Justice Ministry said charges he would be facing. The country's Human Rights Commission tweeted that representatives had visited Bunyoni in detention and said he had not faced any abuse. Bunyoni was considered the number 2 in the country's ruling party and was a close ally of former President Pierre Nkurunziza, who died in office in 2020. He has been under United States sanctions since 2015 over his alleged role in violating human rights during violence sparked by Nkurunziza's decision to seek a 3rd term in office. Bunyoni serves of countries it gives preferential treatment in trade 3 years after the neighbors downgraded each other's trade status amid a diplomatic row driven by historical grievances. In announcing the move through a government gazette on Monday, South Korea's Ministry of Trade, Industry and Energy also said Seoul will further restrict technology and industrial exports to Russia and its ally Belarus to repair relations as they tighten their 3-way security cooperation with Washington to counter the threat posed by North Korea. Pyongyang has used the distractions caused by the war to accelerate the testing of nuclear-capable missiles. The South Korean officials expect Tokyo to restore Seoul as a favored trade partner, as well as that forces have taken to the streets of several cities in northwestern Syria to protest against warming ties between some Arab countries and President Bashar al-Assad. The biggest demonstration took place on Sunday in Idlib, a stronghold of forces opposed to al-Assad, while smaller groups gathered in Azaz, a refuge for Syrians who fled from other parts of the country amid the 12-year war, and Tal Abyad, a town on the Turkey-Syria border, among other locations in the country's northwest. Small groups of people also staged protests in several European cities, including Amsterdam, Berlin, and Vienna. In separate developments, former Peruvian President Alejandro Toledo has returned to Peru from the United States to face charges of by Peruvian prosecutors investigating a sprawling scandal involving Brazilian construction conglomerate Odebrecht. He is accused of having received millions of dollars from Odebrecht in return for public works contracts. Official images shared by Peruvian authorities show Toledo arriving at Lima Airport on Sunday, dollars in bribes from Odebrecht in exchange for the company winning the contract for the Intel Shinika Shore Highway. He denies the allegations of corruption. In another development, a cheetah has died in India's Kuno National Park in Madhya Pradesh state, the second in less than a month. Forest officials said the cause of the 6-year-old male animal's death was not immediately known. 20 years after the animal was declared officially extinct in the country. On 27th March, a female cheetah, who was part of the first batch of animals brought from Namibia, had died of a suspected kidney ailment. The reintroduction of cheetahs in India has generated excitement, and any news related to them has been making headlines. 8 Namibian cheetahs, 5 males and 3 females, were translocated to India last year amid fanfare. And finally, on Worldview, reportedly tweeting vile content but managed to be verified with a gold tick before being suspended. It comes as confusion continues at how Twitter's updated verification system is working. Twitter has been approached for comment. Meanwhile, the Real Disney Junior account has also been given a gold badge. Last week, Twitter dropped blue marks from legacy verified accounts, and there is a new color scheme to its and most of them were reinstated, with almost every user with more than 1 million followers receiving a new blue tick. And with that, we wrap up our package for you on Worldview live from Rio, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, and you've been watching Worldview on Spectrum TV. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.